Hi, and welcome to Crowdfunding for Artists. This is our first edition with a specific focus on literature today, but this is going to be advice and guidance and tips which is relevant for all types of artsy projects and projects across the board really as well. So what I'm going to do is take you through the process of setting up, creating, planning, launching your artsy crowdfunding project and putting you onto the road for success. So what I'm going to do is I've got a little presentation I'm going to share with you. So let me get that loaded up here first. Okay. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see that now. So this is just a little bit of an introduction, first of all, to us here at Crowdfunder. We're based down at the beach in Newquay. I have a gorgeous view in front of me today. I'm sorry that you guys can't see it as well. We're the largest crowdfunding platform in the UK for rewards. And by that, we mean that we have the most projects. So you may have heard of other platforms that might be big in countries abroad, like America, but here in the UK, we're the specialists. So there's a few different types of crowdfunding that you may have heard of. The main one that I'm going to be talking about today here is rewards, the one sort of second one in from the left. Now, you may have heard of equity or lending as well. Donation is a really common one. I know I get lots of invites to donate to my friends who are always cycling to Paris or something through that sort of direction. And community shares is perhaps a lesser known one, but works very similarly to equity. The way in which rewards-based crowdfunding works, I'm going to explain it here with a little bit of an example. We have Phil from Leeds Bread Co-op over there on the left-hand side. Phil had an idea that he wanted to open a bakery. He needed some money to buy 2 ovens, pretty essential to a bakery. He had gone to the bank, wasn't able to get a loan. He didn't have any inheritance or enough in his savings to make up for that 8,000 that he needed to buy these 2 ovens. So he decided to run a crowdfunding project back in 2013, it actually was. So what he did was offered up an opportunity for people to put money towards his project target of £8,000, and in return, they get a reward. So how it worked for Phil, people in his local community might pledge £50 and they get a loaf of bread every month for a year. They might have pledged £20 and they get a customised extra special birthday cake at some point in the next year. So it was things that he could offer them, which was ways of acknowledging their contribution to his business, and he gets the money. So nobody owns a part of his business. Nobody gets a say in what he does. He doesn't have to give the money back. It's straight up swap, money for reward. And that's the way it's going to work for your project as well. So why do people bother with crowdfunding? The funding is the obvious bit. It's in the name, so we know that bit. But actually, there's a whole host of reasons why people do go down this route. And actually, for a lot of projects, these other reasons are way more important than the fact that they're getting this funding. So validation is a really, really key one. Validation that your idea is something that people want, it's something that people need, that they're willing to put their hand in their pocket and say, I believe this is a good idea and it should happen. So if you're looking at setting up a community project, it's basically going out to community and saying, do you want this? Before you go to all the trouble of actually setting it up, it's a really good way to gauge that interest. What, of course, you'll be doing as well, that bottom one down in the left-hand corner, is doing that marketing of your idea, is getting the word out there, making it known so that people have heard of what you're doing. It's a really great way to drive participation, to drive interest, to make sure that people locally or further afield know about what you're doing and know about the good that it's doing. So we're obviously here today talking about artists specifically. So we've just recently launched a campaign where we're going out to artists and looking for ideas that benefit others in their community in England. We've actually got £125,000 worth of extra funding that can be pledged towards people who are crowdfunding on Crowdfunder, but I'm going to go into how that funding works in a little bit more detail towards the end. So first of all, let's go through the first steps in planning your project. Now, if you've already got your project set up and you're already through these stages, bear with me because we're going to come on to kind of the next few steps very, very shortly. But this is really, really essential in building strong foundations for your crowdfunding project. So first part, building your team. No man is an island. Don't feel that you have to do this completely alone. Just because you're an individual artist, or you're a writer, or you're a creator, it's really good to have a few people around you that you can turn to, you know, to check something that you've written, to help you out with some photos, with shooting your video, to help you with posting things on Facebook and spreading the word, and maybe even sticking some posters up or giving out some flyers. So people who you can rely on to help you out and lend a hand. The next step is going to be identifying your crowd. That's figuring out who it is that we think is going to support your project. And of course, growing that crowd, getting more people interested in what you're doing in the lead up to you launching your project. So this is taken from our Crowdfunding for Artists fundraising pack, which you can download from the artist campaign page on Crowdfunder. It's on page 9. It's a bit of a template for mapping out who is going to be in your crowd, who is going to contribute money towards your project to help you to do what it is you're trying to do. So we've highlighted there 8 groups just to get you started. We can see you've got your kind of inner network, your friends and family. We've got local people, local businesses, art fans maybe, other artists, people locally who might be doing something similar, who might be involved, think that this is a great idea. And then we've got things like social media, you know, any high net worth individuals you might know, and anyone else. Really good idea to go through that and think about who else might be on your list. Of course, it might be that you have some other segments, other groups that we haven't looked at on here, and that's fine. Do your own network map. And bit of a tip, make sure you've got a really big piece of paper, because before you know it, it's going to be quite large, and that's great, that's good, that's what we want. Okay? So now we're going to look at a bit of an example, a case study. This was a creative project, a film project that I worked with earlier on this year, called Wash Club. They were trying to raise £10,000 towards the making of this film. And we're going to look at what they did in the planning stages just quickly to see how they grew their crowd. So this is a couple of examples taken from their social media. We've got some Twitter, we've got some Facebook there. Now, what they did really well, actually, was they had a nice stream of content in the lead up to them going live, where they were just trying to warm people up to the idea that they were going to be launching this project, that there was going to be a way for them to get involved. And that's really key. You can see that there. They're advertising that date, Tuesday, April the 12th. It's a big day. Membership details coming soon. And, you know, you can become an official Wash Club member tomorrow. And then they use this hashtag, #YouAreNotYourLaundry, the whole way through, which I think was quite interesting. And they've teamed all of that together with some really fantastic visuals. As artists, you know, as writers, as creatives, this is going to be something which is really, really key in making you stand out and connecting with other people who share your ideals and share those creative values. So we expect to see things that are vibrant, things that are stand out, that are stylish, unique, whatever that might be, that fits in with what you're doing. So definitely, you know, have some fun with that. Put together something very unique, very bold, that's right for your project, and use that to warm up that crowd so that at the point of you going live, everyone's really, really excited and they know that it's coming. So now we're moving on to actually creating your project. This is the physical stuff. This is actually getting your page on Crowdfunder together. So first things first that we need to do is figure out what your target is going to be. Now, your target is a little bit of a balance of how much you need to make something happen and how much you think you can raise from your crowd. Something to bear in mind is that there's two different ways of setting your funding target on Crowdfunder. You can go for all or nothing, or you can go on flexible funding. Now, the first one, all or nothing, does exactly what it says on the tin. If you don't reach your target, you don't get any of the money. None of the money ever leaves your backers. There's no fee. There's no fee to them. There's no fee to you. Essentially, it closes without any money changing hands. No rewards have to change hands. On flexible funding, whatever you raise, you get to keep. It doesn't matter if you hit your target or not, you still take that money home. Now, people often ask, why would I choose one over the other? Now, for most projects, all or nothing is the best way to go. It works so much better as a motivator for your crowd, as a way of actually motivating yourself as a project owner as well, of making sure that everyone's striving towards this goal, because it's very much an ultimatum. It is all or nothing. Now, flexible funding is often a great choice for charitable projects, for example, where anything that they raise is going to be put to good use. So that's an option that you might want to consider for there. Now, I would say, regardless of whether you're on all or nothing or flexible funding, your target should be set to a number that you think is achievable and a number that you think you can reach. If you don't think you can reach it, you should be looking again at your target, or you should be looking again at the size of your crowd and making some adjustments there. We wouldn't want you to flip your project over to flexible funding because you think it's too high. That's definitely not the best approach. So how stretch targets work on Crowdfunder: reach your first target, once you hit 100%, you can actually add in a stretch target behind the scenes so that as soon as that happens, it automatically updates with a new target, whatever that might be. So if, for example, you're wanting to raise 10,000 to start with, to get your community project off the ground, you might have a second stretch target in mind, which might be for something like £15. And actually with that £15, you can do that much more. You can do a couple of extra things. You can, buy that extra piece of equipment, or put on that extra event, or hire that extra member of staff. So what we would want to do would be for you to write into your overfunding box exactly what difference that extra money is going to make, and to set that stretch target for something that you think is the next logical step of where we can go from there. Final thing to bear in mind when setting your target is that there are costs that are going to come out of the amount of money that you raise at the end. There's the crowdfunder fee, which is 5% plus VAT. There's also costs associated with the different payment providers. So with Stripe, which is credit and debit cards, and the same with PayPal. You may also have some costs associated with delivering your rewards. So do make sure you've done the sums and you've made sure that you have enough once all of those bits and bobs have come out to still continue with what it is you're trying to do. So target setting, really, really key. We've just got to be mindful of how much we think we can raise, how much we need to raise, and making sure that we are making that really, really clear right from the start. So, writing your story. This is the bit that I actually find that I have the most fun with when I'm working with projects. I really enjoy putting pen to paper and figuring out who we are and what it is that we're saying about ourselves and what's interesting and why are people excited about what we're doing. So this is the big description text box. This is on tab 2 when you're in the process of editing and adding your project. So really key to make sure that you approach this knowing exactly what it is you're trying to achieve with this piece of writing. What we're trying to do is make sure that people have enough information about who you are and what you're trying to do, and that they're inspired and motivated by your story, by the impact that you're trying to have, by your success, by your achievements, by your goals and your vision for the future, that they're really infused and connected with this project and feel that it's something they want to support. So that's what we're trying to do. We also need to make sure we're coming across as a credible project that, you know, doesn't look fishy in any way. There's no unanswered questions. We want it to seem very honest and something which is going to be, you know, achieve some good in the world. My approach usually is actually to write out some bullet points, first of all, of what I think the most interesting things about my project are, and then to organise those into sections. We definitely want to be using subheadings all the way through. Lots of short sections with specific subheadings, so we guide people through there. Keep the most interesting, juicy, exciting stuff right at the top, so people don't have to scroll down very far to find it. Really, really key to make sure we've got plenty of images in there. Visual texture on a page really can make all the difference, particularly for creative projects, particularly for arts projects. It's expected that we can see some examples of your work, that we can see what it is that you're all about, and we can really get that across visually. You know, artists tend to be very visual people, a lot of them. So we really want that to come through and to show that. We don't want to see just chunks and chunks of text. Really good idea to include some testimonials as well. If you've got any nice quotes of people talking about your work, or any commissions, any big projects you've been involved with, definitely stick those on the page. Really helps with credibility and building up a bit of a sense of your profile as an artist as well. So a lot of the same sort of points really apply to creating a video, except for in a video, we're condensing it right down just to the juiciest tidbits. So we don't want a video to be any longer than 2 minutes, really. Ideally, I would keep it even shorter than that, to be honest. The most interesting part of your video should come in the first 30 seconds. We find that the drop-off rate on videos is really big after 30 seconds, apart from for those people who have really, you know, hit the nail on the head and done a, you know, a fantastic job of producing something really, really strong. But that's okay, you know, as long as we're getting the key stuff over in the first 30 seconds and they're getting a real sense of who you are, I think that's absolutely fine. We definitely want to see you on screen, and some of you may cringe at that and be horrified at the thought of getting behind the camera, but it's really, really important that we can connect, we can get that audience to connect with you as a human being, as an individual, and that all again plays into that credibility and the sense of that personal connection to your project. I find that with crowdfunding videos, it's actually best not to script it too much. Otherwise, sometimes it can sound a bit scripted, unless you're very practiced and you're very confident and you've done a fair bit of that kind of thing before. I generally write down some bullet points and then just talk from the heart and kind of see what comes out when you start speaking. It will tend to come out a bit more natural and a bit more genuine, particularly if you're not super confident on camera. And don't panic too much about trying to do, you know, this is the final take, this is the last take. Just keep the camera rolling and just keep having a go, and you'll find that one of the cuts comes out really, really well, okay? So here we have an example of a project that a project in Plymouth actually, where we had some youngsters who were helping out with setting up of a theatre down there. Now, when I play this video, I don't think it actually works very well. I think that the sound goes a bit funny. So what I'm going to do instead is, hopefully, where have we gone? Let you guys click on that link later on. We'll share that around so you can click on that and watch that in your own time. So I'm going to move on straight onto rewards. Now, rewards is sometimes where projects start to get a bit stuck and they start to think, I don't know what it is I can offer, you know, I don't have a product, you know, so to speak, what can I do? Now, particularly for creatives, I think actually there's real value in what you can offer. So we've gone through some examples here on this page. So organising an event is a really nice one, whether that's an exhibition, or a reading of a new piece of work, whether that's a Q&A with an author. We've got things like, you know, a writing masterclass, be that for poetry. You could even do illustration. You know, again, if you're a visual artist, it might be painting, pottery. If you're a performing artist, it might be that you do, you know, a drama workshop or dance, whatever that might be. There's so much fun you can have with doing that. And it's a really great way to actually get real people in the room with you and connect with them on a real human level. You can, of course, also give away actual published work. If you have books, you know, you can have them signed by the author. That always adds an extra layer of exclusivity onto them. The same as in, you know, if you have prints of work, you can definitely, you know, do some signed prints, things like that. You could even do commissions, and you can do those, you know, on a really small scale, or you could do, you know, something a bit bigger. So I've known projects who offer, you know, a short four-line poem about, you know, any of their backers, or they'll do you a limerick if you give them a name, and they'll send that to you, which is really fun and really quick and easy. Again, I know others who have created characters, you know, in their drawing style for each of their backers if they send in a photo as one of their rewards, or, you know, they'll do a drawing of a backer's pet. Is another one that I know that has worked quite well. But, you know, you can also go, you know, on the larger scale with that and actually put, you know, a more of a full commission down as a reward if you'd like to. And of course, let's not forget thank yous. Acknowledgement, ways of people feeling good about what they've done and what they've contributed towards. So whether that's, you know, a plaque on a wall somewhere, whether that's a letter of thanks, whether that's, you know, some sort of sponsorship, whether that's, you know, an award for, you know, people within a community group in their name. There's all sorts of different things you can do. Best thing to do is have a look through lots and lots of past projects and see which kind of ones have been getting a lot of support. It's a really good way to guide you through. So we're now on to the final stage, which is actually running the project, the live project. So first thing we've got to do, of course, is launch it. Now we want to pick a date which works for us. We tend to find, though it does vary from project to project, that midweek is quite a good time, and we tend to find that later on in the day, so afternoon to evening, is really the best time to be launching. I would always sort of avoid, you know, first thing on Monday morning or last thing on Friday evening, when generally people are either at work or at the pub. Also, of course, bear in mind other dates, things that might be going on around you. If you know, for example, that there's a big Christmas fair on one day, probably don't launch your project. It's very local and it's going to rely on the audience on that day. Maybe you want to do it a couple of days before, and then you can promote your project at that event, for example. So be aware of the calendar. Really key to get off to a great start. It shows people that you mean business, is the easiest way to explain that. We want to have at least 10 people written down. The Christmas card list, go to the Christmas card list and make sure that all of those people are ready and willing and happy to put a pledge on right, you know, in the first hour, first 2 hours, to get you off zero and get you up to at least 10 backers to those double figures. Really key to keep your supporters up to date as well. We want them to feel that they're involved, that they're important. They're definitely one of your best assets as a live project, is utilising those existing supporters and their own networks, their own friends, their channels of communication, and hopefully, you know, using those to our advantage and making sure that they're pushing this project out wider than we could do without them. And of course, the final part, share, share, share. This is the bit we all know. There's so many different things you can do to promote your project, from social media, and we mean things like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. There's tons and tons of different ways that you might want to share it. Finding bloggers who are in your particular sphere, people who are writing about the kind of thing that you're doing. Again, people offline who are writing about the kind of things that you're doing, and getting in touch with them. Local groups in the community, newsletters, notice boards, libraries, universities, schools. There's all sorts of different groups locally that you might want to go out to. Press, PR is a really, really key one again, particularly when you've got a very local project. I generally say to target local press. If you're successful in getting some local press, It might be, if you're relevant nationally, you might want to try for the nationals. Of course, you can go for industry press as well. Really, really key if you're doing something which is very relevant to a particular segment within the arts industry, and you have a contact in there, is always helpful for getting your story out. Of course, email and picking up the phone, sending a WhatsApp, Snapchat, all of these, very modern forms of communication, along with the very old-fashioned ones, things like sending letters and picking up the phone. Essentially, the more direct and the more personal you can be, the better. So I would ideally like to walk up to my first 10 people in person, tap them on the shoulder and get them to put a pledge on. I can almost guarantee 100% success rate with that. Now, if I call round the next 10 people, I might get hold of maybe 6 or 7 of them. If I send a text, maybe 5 of them might read it straight away, etc., etc. So the more direct, the more personal, the better we find in general that they'll actually, the chances are that will lead to a pledge. So the key for me, the key takeaway on sharing is to make sure that you start from the middle and work your way out. Go with the closest, most personal, most direct thing first, and slowly go out. The danger, if you go too wide, too early, is that you're getting a really wide, sort of unengaged and sort of unaware audience base to look at a project that's actually very, very early on, and it just doesn't look convincing. It just doesn't look credible yet because it's not got enough momentum. It's not got that social proof. So save your press, save your really big, wide mail outs until you've got a bit of numbers on the board. So we're going to look again at Wash Club, who we were talking about earlier, and just seeing a little bit about what they did. So looking at their timeline, this is something that you'll have access to on your own dashboard once your project is live. You can see all sorts of stats. If you're familiar with Google Analytics, you can see much of the same information that you can see on there. So this is showing pledges by day. You can also see page views. You can see your conversion rate of page views to pledges. You can see where they're coming from. You can see the source. And you can see all sorts of things, like which reward is raising you the most money, and all sorts of things like that as well. Now, this is a very common shaped graph that we see on Crowdfunder. We see a big chunk come in on day 1, then we see it kind of potter through for a few days, kind of plateau a little bit in the middle, and then we see it build again towards the edge with a few really big peaks right at the end. Now, that's really, really common. Big at the end and big at the start. And essentially that bit in the middle is where you've got to really work hard to keep it interesting, keep it relevant, and try and connect with new people. It's one of those things where at the start it's very new and exciting, and at the end there's the big countdown and everyone gets sort of fired up about the fact it's closing. So the challenge really is that bit in the middle. For that reason, I would usually never recommend putting your project live for any longer than 4 weeks, maybe 5 at a push. You can, of course, go for up to 8 weeks, but essentially that's a 1/6 of a year, which is a really huge amount of time to be trying to tell people about this same project and to try and get them excited. If more time meant more money, I always think Red Nose Day would be every day of the year, but it isn't. Short and sharp works best. Let's hold their attention for a short amount of time and then let them move on with their lives. So having a look at what they did in terms of updates, they were really great at keeping their supporters engaged. They got them sharing, they gave them specific things to do. Please do, of course, go actually onto Wash Club's Crowdfunder page and have a look for yourself at all of the great updates that they sent. You can see right the way through the process. They were making it very visual, they were making them very short, very engaging, and I think actually they worked really well. Here's some stuff from their social media. Now, I mentioned social media earlier. Something to remind you about is that actually around about 30 to 40% of pledges on most projects on Crowdfunder come via Facebook, believe it or not. That's a really, really key one. We get round about the same numbers on email. And then Twitter is actually much, much lower for most projects. There are, of course, some exceptions to that, but generally we see around about 10% of pledges coming from Twitter. Now, it doesn't mean that Twitter's a waste of time, because actually Twitter's really great at getting, you know, short and sharp messages out there really quickly to a wide audience. What it's less good at is those click-through conversions. We definitely want to keep Twitter going. We want to, you know, have things going out there and be engaging with people on there. But really, that focus is Facebook. That's the one where we get that rich engagement and we get people. Things like LinkedIn can be a really great way of connecting with professional contacts as well. And particularly if you have a pretty decent Instagram following, I would say that's one worth looking at and thinking about how you can use that following to your advantage with your crowdfunding project too. So what we're going to do here is just look at a couple of examples of some people who have run projects on Crowdfunder previously. Now, this first one ran back in October last year. It's a really lovely book, very sweet book, written by a guy who was basically going on a search through Europe for this rare bird, the curlew. He raised, as you can see, just over £5,000, and he did that in 28 days. And what he did, of course, there was really expanded out awareness of his book that he was publishing. That means he already had essentially 112 readers, 112 people who will be reading his book and connecting with his story right out of the gate. This one actually only just closed less than a couple of weeks ago, I think. It's really, really new project. It's actually from a author illustrator who's put together this lovely book in light of the events around Brexit and the crisis that we're seeing over the sea in Europe, and you know, is maybe sort of coming over, you know, a little bit into the news over here and that kind of thing. It's essentially a book aimed at primary school children that talks about a dog called Alba, a white dog called Alba, who has to leave his homeland and sail across the sea and go to a new country because of war and fighting that's going on. And it talks about how Alba is received by people in that new country who haven't seen dogs like him before, and what they sort of say to him. It's about teaching compassion and tolerance for primary school kids. It's a really lovely project, so definitely do have a look at that one as well. The last one that I'm going to show to you just quickly is, again, from summer this year. This is a really great example of life writing. So what she did here, she wanted to do an autobiography of Georgie, as she calls her, who was very closely linked to the Duke of Wellington, but was never married to him. There was this kind of almost covert relationship that they had. She was lucky enough to actually be invited by the Duke of Wellington's family and Georgie's family to do this autobiography and to tell her story as it's never been told before. She was given access to letters that had never been published, to family photographs and archives. So it was a really great opportunity for her. And you can see that she raised really fantastic amount of money, actually, £6,000. And again, that was just summer this year. There's some other great projects live at the moment as well. There's a couple that spring to mind immediately. There's one called Back Dogs Forever Home, which is a really, really sweet project. And there's another one, if you have a look on our homepage, through the Trending projects, which is another children's book raising awareness and trying to help out kids who have a fear of the dark, which is really, really cool. So what I'm going to do now is just go back to quickly talking more about how that extra funding works. So we have £125,000 available from Arts Council England. The way that it works, the first thing you need to do is set up your crowdfunding project. You need to crowdfund. That's really, really key, is this money is only available for projects that are crowdfunding. Once you're live and you've shown that your project has some support, there's an opportunity for Arts Council to come along and potentially pledge up to 25% of your target. That's, of course, if you fit the criteria for the kind of projects that they're looking to fund. Now, you can find that criteria by going /artists from the Crowdfunder homepage. You can also see on there's a link to a full application form. Please, please, please make sure you fill out that application form. The order in which to do things is set up the crowdfunding project, launch the project, fill out the application form, and then hopefully you'll get that pledge. Now they'll pledge up to 25% of your target, so you need to raise the other 75% yourself, and they'll pledge up to £10,000. So essentially, you'd be looking to raise somewhere between £4,000 and £40,000, and you could get a pledge of between £1,000 and £10,000. If anything isn't clear, if there's anything that you want some clarity on, and for that full criteria, again, please do check crowdfunder.co.uk/artists. That's where you can find all of the information. Okay. So that's everything I wanted to go through for today. I'm just going to see if I can do this and stop the sharing. There we are, fantastic, I'm back. So I hope that was useful for everyone. If you do have any questions, if anything's sort of come up along the way, the best thing for you to do is to tweet to me directly, and I'm always happy to jump on and answer any questions that have come up. You can find me at Sami Mauger, that's spelled SAMIMAUGER. You can find me there. If you have a look on Crowdfunder's Twitter, I think there's some stuff that I was tweeting out on there earlier, so you can find me quite easily. Best of luck with all of your projects, and I'm hoping to see you all crowdfunding and receiving some money as artists